Dad. Okay, hi. So, yeah, it's Monday most of the time, and we're back. The cats are both having a good old snooze here with me in the studio. I think I've woken them both up because I started talking, but we've been having a good day of getting some stuff done, and now we're all having a relaxing time in the old studio. So I thought I'd show you the page that I'd done on Friday and posted. So the principle is this: people suggest one-page story ideas, and I write and draw a comic from those. And I have done over 600 in the last almost 2 years. We're 3 months short of 2 years, and I'm over 600 at this point. And I think about 650. That's nuts. Anyway, so it doesn't matter. None of that matters. What matters is it's one-page stories. One page. And so, and I'll do it either in a landscape format, which is side to side, or portrait format, which is up and down, right? And we've done a lot of these, and we're having a good time and a lot of fun. And but something came to mind recently, and that was because I'm always trying to grow and challenge myself further, which encourages growth when you do that. So I suggest it. What if I try to do a larger narrative based on one-page story ideas and interlace those, like have some common factors that go throughout the pages? And so that's what we started trying last week. And there's a challenge in that because there could be a limitation to the pages. You know, there's a challenge in that is because honestly, you want a sense of uniformity. You want a sense that there's similarity in style or similarity in tone from page to page to page. I'm decrying that. I'm throwing that out the window because what I'm finding is I want to maintain the individual pages as their own, and at the same time, when read in sequence, they tell a larger narrative. But principally, each of the one-page stories are to be by themselves. And that can be just read as a little moment in time of each of these instances. So the page that I did Friday is, I've done 4 pages now, and the page that I did on Friday is page 2. Sorry, Corbin was leaving and it distracted me. So that's page 2 of the 4, and so that's the one that I've got on screen now. I did it in ballpoint pen, and then I scanned it and I put it into the computer and I added the text, which is my general operating principle with how I do all of these pages. There is some editorial stuff that I'll do as well using Photoshop, but principally it's just to add text. So this sits in the narrative now. So if this is page 1, and it's about one of these characters who is a game designer who's at a convention where he's getting all these, convention questions, and then he gets a phone call and says, I need a release, I need a break. So I'll see you guys tonight. And then page 2, oh, hi, Susanna, by the way. Susanna just said hi, I missed that, I apologize. So page 2 is Memory Lane for Grandpa. So this is another character who is, his grandfather is clearly dissociating, or maybe he's not. Maybe he's just reminiscing about something, and his grandson's more interested in playing a video game in his room than listening. But either way, whichever perspective you look at it, that follows suit for the second character. I think it does say something about my thinking along the lines of this work, because I try to think of each page in its own unique way. If Grandpa is dissociative, or if Grandpa is just trying to recall something and to share this with his grandson, they're not connecting. That was my whole let's play with this idea. And so that's page number 2, which is the one from Friday. So they're all out of order now. The page number 1 is actually the 3rd page I did. Page number 2 is actually the 4th page I did. And then page number 3 is the 1st page. So this is the four characters trying to get off of a spaceship and talking about, the great exploration into space. So it's a different narrative device in this one. It's utilizing two structures. One is the narrator's over voice about some exposition about an idea, and at the same time there's the characters' conversational voices inside of the actions in the panel, oblivious to what the narrator's saying, and they're just going through their adventure. The summation of an idea is the narrators. It's not the characters in a panel. That continues on. So you can do that with writing. You can have an ongoing action on one level, but at the same time, the fulfillment of an idea on another. So you don't have to pigeonhole yourself into one thing and one thing only. So then page 4, which is the 2nd page, is another narrative. And this one is, it's a different suggestion again. But so what I did is that I drew these 4 game designers, which you've now seen 2 in other adventures, in previous pages. And so then, it's talking about how they're world champions, and they were playing a certain game when an incident happened, and they disappear. In the real world, missing, presumed, gone. And so this hyper-contextualizes the previous page, and it makes it no longer about guys on a spaceship trying to get out. It makes you realize that, that was a video game. And that these characters that have been appearing in previous pages are the people that were playing said video game. And so as these different pages and different stories are happening, where the characters are coming together, now it all connects. Now it all interconnects on this last of the 4 pages. So if you look at the course of story, there are 4 people, and they get together to play a game. So we've seen 2 things. We've seen 3 things, and then something happens in the game. So the first thing that we've seen is 2 of the 4 characters and what they were doing before they came to join in on the game. And the second thing that we see is the actualization of the game. And the third thing that we see is that point where, something comes out of this, something happens. So there's missing beats in there, right? There's the 2 other people. What were they doing before the game? There's the actual gameplay itself. Are we going to see any more than just a singular page? And the potential beat of the end of it, of what actually happened to them. Or do we leave it on this sort of a Twilight Zone ending? So you can fit pieces in here. And then, of course, you could actually fit in a piece at the beginning where you try to introduce the fact that there's 4 people, etc., etc. I don't think that's necessary, frankly, because I think it's more interesting if we draw the reader in by having actions take place to lead us into the narrative, as opposed to just this balloon blanket over the top. Hey. So I think that there needs to be a separation between the page that's on the screen now and the page that takes place in the game. I think there needs to be one more beat in between there, just to make something more of it. I think the other 2 people need to be introduced. and I am leaving the idea of something happening at the end till the end. But again, I'm taking whatever suggestions I get, and the one for the page that was today's, which is Memory Lane for Grandpa, it was a suggestion from John. So there's Memory Lane for Grandpa. So we met the requirements of Grandpa's, strolling down memory lane. But at the same time, we fit it into the larger narrative. So Grandpa is having his memory lane moment. It's just his grandson's oblivious to it. So then, page number 1. I'm trying to remember what that one was, and I'm so sorry for that. Chicken Villain was page number 1, and that suggestion came from Liz Bent. So the character in the new game that this person has designed, which he's trying to promote at this event, is about a game where the villain is a chicken. So we fit that in there, but in the larger narrative, he's calling up his friends to say, let's get together and game tonight. So then, the Into the Unknown page is about soldiers having to fight against the unknown. So that's there. We don't reveal the enemy. We just know they're trying to get away from it, and it's hurt one of them, and they got to get off this ship, right? And they're clearly holding up their zappers to make sure nobody gets them. And so that's covered. And then the last one was a game where if you die in the game, you die in reality. So that's page 4. So each of these one-page suggestions, we're doing them. It's just, as I've described earlier, we're connecting them together. Now, Paula suggested we need a Gordon Ramsay page. And sure, why not? So it's very... how does that fit in all these suggestions? It doesn't. That's the whole point. So, I've been writing down on the back of the pages the suggestions for each of them, and and so that I don't lose those details. But so I think today's is going to be, we need a Gordon Ramsay page, which I don't know what to do with that. I haven't thought about it. I found a note on my desk a second before we started, and here we go. So the other thing that, before we get into that, I talked about this before, and I'm going to continue to advocate it even more so. Now, I'll be doing a video soon on YouTube here. It's just going to be a video I shoot and put on YouTube. It's just page by page flip through of a sketchbook. And because this one that I'm working in is a third done, so I'm going to be posting that very soon. Now, for those that haven't seen any of this, I don't know how interesting this will be to you. And I'm not showing the whole pages. I'm just showing what the camera covers on the central spread. And then for the proper video, you'll see the whole thing. But as I flip through this is how I work on idea generation, characters. I study other things. I look at other things and try to understand the way that they look at stuff and put it together. And, and at the same time allow myself to foray into my own imagination and try to design things and so forth. But keeping a sketchbook can really help you be open and receptive to ideas. And at the same time, so these characters here, all this illustration up here of these body forms, trying to get characters to move through space together, that's a page. I ended up scanning this and making a page from that. And so there'll be a few instances of this as we go through. This was a page, and then I drew over top of it. This is a page about this fella and his wife out in their farm field, and oh great, another alien's landed in our backfield, which is a riff on the Superman mythos. And then this one is about an inventor of all of these synthetic robot people, just because he wanted people to continue his dance party. So that became a page, and then I always end up drawing over top of things in my sketchbooks. I don't know why. I don't know why I do it. I'm compelled to do so. And so there's no preciousness in this book that says everything has to stay crystal clear. So oftentimes it's just a hodgepodge of visual elements. And I'm fine with that, because honestly what it does is it allows me to flip through this, and it just becomes this pure imagination moment where I can just, oh yeah, I like this little part on this page, and I like how this random element from something else I was clearly drawing into, mixes with it. That's what we can do with that. There's a page that I did that I haven't covered up. This is a bunch of post illustrations. There is a video up of all of these, I think, on YouTube here. And then this is another image that I did for a page. About people leaving Earth, I think it is, or people going to the new Earth or something. This is exploring shapes and exploring, effects. I'm trying to play with that. So it just goes on and on and on. More effects, robot people, bit of both. and so it's just playing with ideas. And then these are, again, 2 finished pages. So this goes on and on. That we've just got through a third of what's in this book already. My point is, keep one of these around and allow yourself to explore that in a way so that you're not worried about finished art. You're not worrying about somebody else seeing this and going, that's the best drawing I've ever seen. You're not worried about somebody looking at this idea and going, that's some kind of dumb idea. That's none of their business. This is your sketchbook for you to play with things and play with notions and play with ideas and just shapes. Can I make interesting designed things? And then another thing that you can do, which is I find this to be a really great way to just allow yourself to think of page layouts, and for you to just put things together in an interesting way for yourself, so that the reason that I would suggest you would do this is to take away the uniformity of approach that we generally have as we work on projects. People will say, well, I do things this way. And they get lockstepped into this is the way they do. And there's nothing wrong with that. If that works for you, that works for you. But if you want to try to expand upon that, this is a really fast and dirty way to do that, because rather than drawing full pages and testing new layouts, you can do it in this really loose thumbnail kind of a way. And so when it comes to something like the 4 interconnected pages that we've done now, and how they're different approaches, different mediums, but there's a uniformity of story, is because I think a lot about how the shapes of pages work together and how can we connect those elements. So with that in mind, the connecting elements, just to go back over these one more time, folks, the connecting elements amongst our 4 pages are, if you notice in the bottom, hello Jim, welcome aboard. If you notice in the bottom of this page, 2 of the panels don't have square borders all the way around them, or rectangular borders all the way around them. They're open bordered. And if you look at the top right panel in this page, the character, who's again an open border one, but he's actually bleeding over the panel before him. He's just slightly stepping into that one, just to pull you along despite that void space between them. So then on the next page, there's the second panel where Grandpa's foot and the bottom of the chair are peeking into that first panel and peeking out of that second one, just to again break the shape of the panel, make it something a little more interesting. It draws your eye across. And if you take a plastic overlay or something, and you were to take a red pen, you would realize that it does this zigzag thing for the shapes along the bottom. And I can show people what that means if you're interested. But so then there's no broken panels in this one, but I've done a sneaky thing. The second and the fourth panels have blank backgrounds, and it wouldn't have been any challenge whatsoever just to where those blank backgrounds are, to delete the frames in those spaces so that they were open-ended panels. But I didn't. I just left them the way they were because it just continues that narrative in this case along. But it still presents that similar continuing pattern through the pages. Page number 3 has overlapping panels. It has broken edged panels. If you look at the third panel, the bottom one in the center, as he's pointing out his zapper, he's breaking out of that panel. So we've got a breakout of a panel. We've got an overlapping panel again. And then page 4, you can see the overlapping panel 2 bleeds back into panel 1, and I've done the same sneaky thing I did again on page 2, and that is, well, there's not necessarily a clearly defined border around the panel. The characters are moving like out into the void. So if I was to have the background, the whole page here be black, there would be no white border on that. You know, if it was to put a white border around the panels per se. And it would just go off into the blackness of the background. But, you know, again, trying different things. And the other overlap and breakaway panel, of course, is in the bottom right corner where the newspaper is overlapped. So there's a couple of different elements that I'm trying to continue through here. So if there's any hard, fast rules that have to carry on, I guess they would be very simple. They would be break out of a panel that has no borders on it, on an edge, at least one edge, or maybe no borders at all, and there's a continuing overarching narrative, even though each of the one-page stories are specifically their own. So that's the sort of hard, fast rules I've set up for myself. Oh, I guess the fourth one would be they're all in landscape format. You can't switch from going side to side to top and bottom and then back again. You can, but the problem with that is it's too jarring. You know, it would be the same as if we were to be watching a television, per se, and the television starts rotating as you're trying to watch your show. You know, that's disorienting, right? There's a really interesting shot at the midpoint of 2001: A Space Odyssey. There's a really interesting shot where Dave Poole, is it Dave Poole or is it? I think it is. Anyhow, Dave is running laps around the habitat portion of a spaceship, and so he's just jogging along the floor, and as he's moving, you know, the camera is moving with him, but you realize, hey, we're going around a circular room. How does that work? And they actually had to build a giant circular set on a gimbal so that it would rotate, you know, and to do this shot. But the whole idea of that is the first part of that film is set in the past. The second little piece of that film is set on the bureaucrats having a corporate meeting about, well, we're going to have to go and take a look at the terrible thing. And then there's a one singular moment of disruption from that, and then we jump over to the spaceship, which is really the second half of the film. So it's really interesting that they do these little beats and these little differences in order to separate this context from that context from this context, and yet at the same time that film prefaces those actions taking place. There is wonderful pauses in the past, because it's the dawn of man, it says, and there's wonderful quiet pauses and just ambient sounds and no action. Characters sitting around as a group in their cave or whatever. And then things happen, right? And then when we get to space, there's the same thing. There's these quiet, reflective moments of a character reading a book, and just moves the page. And we're engaged in that again. So there's recurring things. At the second point, where there's a shot where there's a conflict in the past where the camera does an arc movement. And then when we see the one guy who's going to the bureaucratic meeting, the thing that he's on has a section in the center of this craft that takes him to his meeting where the gravity changes. And so you step from this floor, and then you put your foot up on the wall, and then now you can walk up that way, like you're walking on the floor. So that prefaces, so that one thing steps into the next thing, and then we see the guy running laps around the room. So there's consistencies that things carry on in different narratives. And so it's just whether or not you look for those. You can, like zoom shots. Whenever something bad happens, the camera goes on the main character and focuses on their expression. That's really obvious. And when you see that happen a few times recurringly in a film, not only does it strip it of its impact, but it just becomes as usual, in the sense that I guess they just like to, every time a character has a reaction, they gotta zoom right in on it. So, yeah, establishing a set of rules and a set of guidelines to try to carry through a larger narrative is a good way to unify those things, even though these pages that I'm doing this story in are one's mixed media on brayer off paper that's had paint rolled over it, just let dry. And then the second one's ballpoint pen on a cardstock. And then the third one is originally pencil line art, but then digitally colored. And then the fourth one is white pencil crayon and white pen on a black cardstock. So that's 4 different stylistic approaches, medium approaches. But they're going to come together a little bit more because we've got those recurring elements in that same structured presentation of story. So where do we go from here? So I guess we're going to do... we can do... There's 2 things we can do. We can either do... we need a Gordon Ramsay page, which was Paula's suggestion here. Or we can go through the book and find something else and find another suggestion that's outstanding right now and incorporate that in. Either one is fine by me. So if anybody has a preference that might, that they might sooner see me do than the next thing, just let me know. But the trick again is, how do I connect? We need a Gordon Ramsay page. Without it becoming too removed from the overarching narrative. Hi, Corbin. Coming up? Corbin's here. Want to say hi? I got a Corbin visit, folks. Hey, everybody. How you doing, babies? What's up? You got a deep voice. Okay. So, yeah. As far as it goes for other suggestions, I got a bunch still from the conventions left over. I've still got all the ones that I'm going through here in the book. It's 650 pages, and there's still lots to do. So thank you, everybody, for your suggestions coming in. We're going to keep at it. Yeah, there's some fun stuff in here. Tribute band to a tribute band is funny. I think we got to fit that in sometime soon. I just don't know what I'd do with it right now. Because the whole point is today it's got to fit into a larger thing. How do we do a tribute band to a tribute band? Have it be its own... what? its own thing as well as. I just looked up a suggestion that says Conspiracy Kitty with a deep, sultry voice. Corbin does that every day. All right, let's just do the Gordon Ramsay page. So, yeah, I don't know. We've got 2 other characters outstanding. So, here's this guy. Here's this guy, right? Here's this guy. Here's this guy. Sorry, I'll put them in frame. There, 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 and there. So we've got 2 more characters. We need a Gordon Ramsay page, and we want to incorporate one of those 2 somehow. So I have an idea. So today I thought I would draw in that mixed approach that I have shown a few times. And if you're not sure what I'm talking about, what I'm referring to, one of the things that I like doing, and specifically you've seen examples of it in the sketchbook, where I will sketch in the art using a water-based marker. And then I will come in with a pen after that, and I will pull out the details. So I think we're going to approach our page today that way. So, lots of different things that we can do with that. And again, as always, if anybody has suggestions they'd like to make, you're very welcome to do so. I love them. I love them suggestions. So I have on my phone, okay, I have just all of these random pictures of whatever, just city scenes and things like that. So here's a fun phone booth. Let's use that. I like the complex information that's in this. You have something to say, Corbin? He's just smacking my elbow the whole time, the entire time. I don't think that needs to be charging it right now. It's fully charged. So I've got this image that I showed you, and we got to stick in a landscape format, even though as soon as you see a portrait format frame of reference, it immediately makes you want to go like this to replicate it. We're not worried about that. So what we do know is that it's got, so we got 2 choices, positive or negative application. What I mean by that is, do we draw what is basically negative space around the objects, or do we draw the objects and leave the negative space out on the surface? That's our big option here, right? Corbin thinks so too. So I think I'm going to go with this one. I think I'll go with the background and drawing the blue in that way. I'm not going to frame off panels. I'm just going to start free forming it, and then if we're lucky, those will be relatively square, rectangular, and when we scan it, we can just pick the image out of the center of it, or leave the frayed edge, whatever, right? So if I draw this first panel, okay, and I'm going to draw it in as the sky, and we're going to leave out the shape of the buildings. Now I'm not being really precious about beautifully, perfectly blended blue. I'm never one that worries too much about that perfect blending of color, because at the end of the day, what's important for us isn't that. What's important for us is the story we're trying to tell. Okay, so I don't know if you can hear Corbin purring away beside me here, or you can see him biting on everything, because that's what he does. But he's being an absolute nuisance today. Now, I've got a fun new tool to show you as well. I bought this yesterday for $3. $3 Canadian. That's a nickel American. And so Lori said, Christopher, why did you buy this? This is for needles. I said, yes, it is. But it's circles. I'm a very basic person, but It's a great little handy ruler to have. And at the same time, circles, not half bad. So today's suggestion is we need a Gordon Ramsay page. Yes. Yeah, I know you're there. Okay, so we've got our source image that we looked up at the start. We've laid in this shape for that background, the sky, and that we know that there's a whole bunch of interesting complexity that's going on in all the information that's in it. So I'm going to do a couple things. I'm just going to put a couple of key little guidelines in place for myself. Okay. And then we'll put run here. And then I think that might be the majority of it. So I'm going to use a couple of tools. This is my choice of tools today. And again, limitations are good as much as limitations are bad. This is the water marker that put that light blue down. This is a light blue pen. This is a regular blue pen, or dark blue in this context. So this is what I'm going to use to do the reproduction of this source image into our narrative. And what does this have to do with Gordon Ramsay? We'll get to that. We're exploring story, and sometimes in the course of exploring story, you just got to take leaps, and you got to take moments where you allow yourself to just play and to find a way to express that story into your visual narrative that you're constructing as you go. It's about having fun, and if we don't have a story in our head immediately off the hop for a topic, just get started doing something. I'm a big advocate of just get started doing something. You know, how's it going to go wrong? You're starting. You're actively applying yourself to start producing some kind of material, and we'll see what comes out of that. So that's how we're going to engage ourselves today. Now I also might use a white jelly roll or some kind of white covering pen as well. We'll see how that goes. But so I'm drawing in all of the details that were on this structure, this pole structure that goes up into the air. And so I'm going to reproduce a whole bunch of that as we go, because I find it interesting and challenging, and at the same time, completely bonkers. There's so many sites that you see of places around the world where, because I'm in North America and there's an ample amount of space, there's not an awful lot of condensing of things that happens, which is not necessarily a good thing. And whereas you see in other worlds, or in other parts of the world, places where they don't have an awful lot of room here, folks. So they're going to have to do some condensing. And so you'll see all the wires for telecommunications in an area that are all impacted on top of each other. Can you see this? I'm trying to draw. He's right beside my hand right now, licking my arm. Stop it. Just sit down. Just sit down. Just sit down, you maniac. No, you gotta sit down in your chair now, because you can't keep licking me all the time. It's weird. It's a weird dude, man. So I like that. I like that as a visual element, something that is not to the norm of where I am. And while it might look interesting and exotic and probably to electricians terrifying, at the same time, it's the norm of wherever that place might be. And even they might not enjoy it. They might love or hate it themselves, so who knows? I just like to... It makes me imagine, it makes my imagination go off about if this is how we're living in condensed environments, and this is the sort of way that we apply our technology. As this world becomes more and more populated, and people get into smaller and smaller spaces of living, which is what seems to be the thing to do. Is it going to be more like that, or is it going to be more like this utopian? Everybody has their own little space, and the Star Trek utopian universe where everybody has all of their needs met because mankind has risen above that, which just sounds wonderful. But I don't think that's going to be what happens. Because if anything shows us in the media and the news today, we don't behave that way. We don't behave that way until we become truly a post-capitalist society, which we're on the way to becoming, but if as supposed by other thinkers on the subjects, it's less that we're, a capitalist society becoming a techno-feudal society, which is not, feudalism is not a good word. So, all right, let me grab this other pen, the light blue, and start applying some definable lines in our background. But at the same time, it is not too dissimilar from that flat background color. So I want to put these windows in on these buildings, and I really like this forced perspective. So we'll do that. Carry that over into the windows, into that shape language. There we go. And then the next one would be farther along, but we're going to follow this line. We're imagining our central line, right? And up from this guy. So there's our next window. Okay, so there's that. And then we're going to do the same thing off of here, but it has to work on that. It's the same building. We want the windows on the same floor of the same building. And so I guess they would be here and here. Not quite wide enough. There we go. Which puts a line on the side of the building like so. Yeah? And then more windows on the same floor, but they would be like this. We're changing the angle to match the rooftop. So there's that next floor of apartment windows as it's revealed in our image. Carry those on. So there's our other windows. So the reason that I'm drawing this in the lighter blue is because it works very closely to the size, the same color as the sky. And so the big differentiation here is the dark blue and the light blue. I suppose I could just have readily done those light blues with this, and it would have been just the same, right? But we didn't. So we're going to continue on, and why don't I do the same with this background here, this building here. There we go. Sneaky. And we'll do it on this side as well. Now, it's not, there's a bunch of jagged shapes along the top of the buildings in the resource image that I'm using. That doesn't matter. And it doesn't matter because it's a resource image. The pictures that you're working from, you're not replicating those pictures. You're using those as a form of inspiration and a means for you to be able to convey the ideas that you want to, but you're not photocopying them. You don't have to stick to locked right in there and stick to them for every shape, every line. That's no fun. That's not drawing. That's photocopying. And we're not photocopiers, folks. So take liberty. Allow yourself to explore, right? And it's that, it also helps for it to not to be the original image that somebody has somebody took a picture. We're not just replicating their picture and taking credit for it. I hate when people do that. There's an original. That's a reproduction. Like when they, here's the picture somebody took and now they painted, or here's a pre-existing drawn cover and somebody reproduces it. Whoa. And the reason that I don't like it is because I would be far more interested to see people do their thing and to make their mark and tell their stories and to espouse their ideas as best they can. Because to me, that's the interesting stuff. That's the thing that's uniquely yours. You've got some ideas floating around in your head that the next person beside you doesn't. But, maybe the person on the opposite side of them is desperate to hear your ideas and to see your ideas, whatever it is. But if you and the person beside you are both reproducing the same style, the same thing, copying what somebody else before you has done, that third person's going to be bored. You have to draw a graph sometimes for my explanations, don't you? Okay, there's a third person and a. Okay, so the second person who likes pie. How do you know that? I don't know. I just think he said something about pie. And he's drawing a thing in a place. And then the second. Olivia said my Hamlet was divine. Yeah. So I'm just playing with all these shapes and these interesting, complex wires and things spread throughout this environment, because that to me is just the cool stuff. That's the neat thing about when you look up and you see, we live in a world where we have this orderly base, and then when you look into the corners, you look into the alleys, and you look into the pockets or the space up above you that nobody really resides in. That's where it gets really complex and interesting. And photography programs oftentimes go out and take an interesting picture, says the teacher. And I don't know if they still do photography programs, I'll be honest, but the students would all go into alleys. Many of them would go downtown into alleys, and they would take pictures of the graffiti, or they would take pictures of the refuse, or whatever it was, or the dinginess of an alley. Look how interesting and unique that is. And it's like, you're not wrong. That's just the background complexity. The stuff in the corner of the eye, right? So we can do a little bit more of our interesting marks as we go along down here, putting some of those details in. But let's come back with the new ruler. And so if everything recedes into this central mass, we can put in all kinds of fun things. Guidelines really lightly put in with a ruler. So then all of these so the balconies would look like this. Yeah, well, in my head they're gonna. And then this one would be down here, if in frame at all. And so if we're going to give shape to it on its side, we go there. There's imagine a second line. Okay. And then underneath is the fourth part of that, underneath the balcony. And so I'm putting another little line in here to define that. So we're just trying to put some shapes together in order to try to convince people that this has dimension. And you know, who knows? Who knows? Maybe someone looking and go, I get it. That looks just like my apartment building. Maybe. So it's pressure. It's all about pressure with drawing with pen. Darker, more pressure. Lighter, less pressure. And then, because I draw on an angle, I tend to put the extra ink on the back of my hand. And so my hand ends up looking like a really bad tattoo by the time I'm done any kind of illustration. Susanna says, I gotta go. I'll come back if I can. Bye for now. Bye, Susanna. Thanks for stopping in. Well, this will be up. You can see this on the U of Tubes after as well. I appreciate when people come and hang out, but I don't want anybody to actually feel obligated at the same time. That's not. I don't know. I try to share ideas and approaches that I take in doing the work, and if that helps other people with their decision-making process when they're creating things, that's grand. You know, I saved you the trial and error of the process I've gone through, and helped to expedite that a little bit for you by helping, you know, by showing you the way I make decisions. So I'm using this light blue now in order to put in some shadows, or, you know, incorporating that same element that's in our sky. And it unifies, see, having this, and these things the same color helps to unify our composition by having that recurring element throughout the page. All right. Now there's lots of people out there that draw better. There's lots of people out there that can explain, you know, some of these things and much clearer than I do. But if there's ever any questions or, you know, interest that people would want me to help out with, let me know. So I'm putting some fun shapes along this large rectangular space here. Now there's text in the source image. Well, I'm not reproducing the source image. So I can do as I will with this and put some interesting patterns and shapes on that, just to keep your eye dancing around. But hopefully putting a little bit of shade on either side of this and through the center is going to add more form and dimension to the poles as they recede up into the skyline. And we'll do one more thing, and that is this side of the building. So some people measure out the spacing as they go when they're drawing, so that this is the proper amount of space between this receding element and this receding element, in this case windows. I'm not as worried about that. So here's the line of our building moving down. Right? Now we can do this if we really want to force that perspective. But I think that there's something to be said for just following the line of the building. This is not a vanishing perspective, but it is a good focal point. It's not a vanishing perspective that everything's going to, is what I'm saying. There we go. So I'll put in some more balconies here. And carry that line up as well. And then, excuse me, I'm moving around a lot here. You gotta move yourself around as you're drawing, and move the page around sometimes because of how your comforting angle, you know, that you're working. So yeah, so there we go. We're making our mark here, and I'm going to put this little divot into each floor rather than drawing, you know, lots and lots of lines for apartment shape. You get it. It comes across here. That's all we want. And so let's have a little bit more fun with the complexity of the wires that are up above. Now, how does this fit into, we need a Gordon Ramsay page? Well, so I've drawn this city view. You were here, you saw it happen. And let's extend it a little bit. So I've drawn this up here, and the idea is I'm going to put somebody in the air up here. Why are you doing that, Chris? Glad you asked. Said someone whose voice is vaguely similar to my own. Well, I'm glad you asked. So I'm thinking while I'm drawing this image, I want to shake it up and challenge the narrative because we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, and there's a, I don't want to just introduce character. This guy is at a convention. This guy is at his grandpa's house. I want to take a giant leap, shall we say, on this page by having, we need a Gordon Ramsay page feature a super type. So I'm drawing this in order to set up contextualizing the super person moving up above. So one of the ways we can do that, we can ask ourselves questions. Do we want them jumping? Do we want them flying? Do we want them falling gracefully? You know, and how do we go about doing it? So here's a space for interesting things to draw our eye up, and then right here is where I'm going to put our super type. So then the next panel, as we draw it, can be extreme shortening, foreshortening, as this character comes landing towards us. Doesn't that sound like fun? They're going to jump on top of us. So if this is our character here, we've got the same space that is going to fit inside this panel, but we can now move within it because we have an understanding of how this building works, how this complex business here in the foreground works leading up to it. I think we need a little disruption in here, like maybe the tops of some trees or something. And then we're going to have a person coming down to the ground. Okay, so first off, let me put in that little space disruption towards the bottom, and I'll draw the top of some trees. And then maybe that also helps us to place ourselves in relationship to this nondescript, artificial built, building. We're not looking at a giant human, we're looking at something that we've made, and so that's where scale starts to come into our heads. Sometimes you have to guess, well, what scale is it? Like where is this thing? How big is it? And sometimes the most simplistic thing is the thing that really wins through. There was an animated program in the 1970s, Spaceship Yamamoto or something like this. It's one of few animated exports that we got around that time. It was about a pirate captain it's about a captain of basically a now outlaw pirate vessel, and he and his entire crew are, wanted by the universal polity. But the point I'm trying to dance myself unwittingly towards is the ship is basically just a battle cruiser, like on Earth here, but in space as a spaceship. I always thought that was great. I always liked the idea that Millennium Falcon, these different spaceships in TV and movies, when you think about the Millennium Falcon as though it was a submarine, then it helps to relate to it and some of the challenges they have of the regular repair and upkeep that they have to do on a regular basis, because it's a machine. A machine has parts that break down, and when you're out there in the void, you gotta make sure everything keeps up and running. So, all right, so I'm using white now, and in some of the places that I put down some marks, I'm coming in here and I'm just taking little hits of value in there just to make it a little bit more interesting and not just a big clunky blob of black, or in this case dark blue. So just because that's why we're doing it. Nice little shape to that street lamp. Time we're at 3. It's practically midnight. Yeah. Well, we better do the same thing up in here too. Let's add some more little shapes. So this is coming together, our first little composition here. Now the source image that I used, great, works for me great, but I don't need it now. I've got it right here. So for that next page, and this is where your sketchbooks come in, right? This is where a sketchbook can be handy, because you might have pictures of somebody falling out of the sky that you scribbled. Whether it's a male or a female, doesn't matter. But you see all the quick doodles and scribbles that I do? That's why I do those. What would a person falling out of the sky look like? Anyways, I can't find anything. So, I'm going to have this just as a shape up here. And then we'll come in with that white and put a couple little boop boops in there. Maybe that'll draw the eye so that you can see that there's something here. And we'll put a little tiny piece of that dark blue in the center. Now, hello again, Corbin. We can do this a couple different ways. One is that we can draw the bottom of said person's feet as they're coming down. And another one is you can draw them coming, like coming down a ladder. It doesn't matter if they're falling out of the sky or however it is, but so here's their 2 feet. Now, piece of paper. So here's the thing. When you're drawing people, right, and you're trying to think about how does their body work as they're receding off into the distance, and you want to make sense of that for your drawing. So in this case is, what is the shape of the person as they're dropping out of the sky? And, you know, if you realize that the feet are this big, they're going to be twice the size of the top of the head, because you're foreshortening so directly that whatever the object is, let's see if this works. So thicker and tapers the thinner, right? So think about doing that with the physical characters that you're drawing. And if that helps you to do it and scribble it on a separate piece of paper, do so. So I'm going to put, I'm trying to think about a really fun, energetic movement. Corbin is carrying on beside me again. He calls it helping. At least I think that's what he's saying. He's like, yeah, I don't speak cat. So here's our first leg. And I'm going to come in there and I'm going to put the knee. And there's where the top of the knee sits. Now, I have to make a decision now about the upper part of the body and how's that going to go, right? So if this is where the knee is, this leg has to go this way or this way or this way. It can't go that way because it would break our knee. So I'm going to put this the bottom is moving so that it's underneath the feet as we're foreshortening. So this is a shorter, like this length of the leg is much longer than this length of the leg, and that's largely because of foreshortening. But otherwise, this should go all the way down here if it's in relationship to the other. So if we have the hip there, then we're going to foreshorten the upper body as well, just to give this sense of we're looking up at an angle and seeing the person dropping down, like so. And then we can do the fun thing of we can put the shadow on the bottom parts so that it gives the sense that they're dropping from the sky. The illumination is up above. So we can shrink down the size of the arm as well, right? Because again, foreshortening. So there's the hand, and I suppose the other hand would be moving like so. And fix that underneath that chin. Sorry. There we go. And we got to put this second leg in. So let's start from the ankle. If it moves up and the knee for this leg is here. Now, hopefully, that gives a sense of a body dropping from the air. Right, Corbin? Right on. Yeah. So there's our second person. Please don't climb up here. Come on, get down. Get down. You don't need to be drawing. I need to be making some art myself. I got some things to do. So, we've started them here, and now we've brought them closer. And then the third panel can be the person landing on their feet and in front of another person. And then let's say he says, "Well, you're late. What took you so long?" I was watching that Gordon Ramsay show, and the other person says, "Hey, he's horrible." Right? Right. Again, this is, okay, I'm going to tell on you. This is where he is, right there. Helping. This is helping. How many other people have this problem? Are you problematic? It's not that he's hungry or anything. He's just a nuisance. I expect all of the attentions. So I'm going to come back in. I'm going to cut this shadow in here with this blue. First, I'm going to put him down again so he stops looking. Stop looking at my elbow. Sit down. No, he's got his own chair. Get on your own chair. So, shadow. If the light source is in the sky up above, there we're going to see our shadow on the underside of our legs and our feet. And then our underarm. There we go. And then take big old chin. A little bit of the nose, right? So I overstepped a little bit there. So if I put this here, and I put this white here to extend that chest piece out a little bit more, I feel better about that. Okay, so there's our hero, dropping from the sky. So we can do two things. We can take this first panel and scan it and just reproduce it behind. You know, that's the easiest way to do it. And if we're working on a time scale, if we're working on a timetable, that would be the thing to do. Okay, I think I need to go feed Corbin. I think he's desperate for attention and food. But we've got a good hour in here, so this is fun. So anyways, this will be the next one. The next suggestion that I'll be doing for the page, we need a Gordon Ramsay page, so that will be the topic involved in this one. But like the characters and the context don't matter. It's the suggested idea is we need a Gordon Ramsay page. Does that mean I have to have a whole page of Gordon Ramsay carrying on as a terrible person he is? Not necessarily. We can incorporate him in somehow. You know, even if it's some person says, who? And the other guy goes, oh, look, here's a video of him on my phone. And the other guy goes, that guy's very rude. Uh-oh, I gotta go. It's a very different way of drawing one of those four characters in. And so, but it also puts the pretense that maybe one of the four of them has superpowers in real life. They're stories. Right? It doesn't matter. But in that larger narrative, we've changed some of the rules again if one of them has superpowers. Right, Corbin? Right. Okay. Want to say anything? Want to say goodbye to everybody? Bye, everybody. Okay. That's it for us. We're going to go get back to doing some things. I will either be back later on tonight or tomorrow. And I'm trying to aim for 1 o'clock, 1 or 2 o'clock. So I hope to see you then. Thanks everybody for coming out and for watching the video. And yeah, go make something. Go do some drawing. All right, that's about it for us. Bye for now.